Hello, this is the craft lecture for Unit 4 on thesis development and outlining. Your assignment for the second half of the class will be to write a persuasive research paper about your topic. Notice that there are two elements to this assignment, both of which we have discussed in previous units of this class, the research element and the persuasive element. In order to write this paper, you will need both information about your topic, which you have been accumulating over the course of the class, and a particular point of view on your topic, a thesis, that you will use this information to support and defend. Like ethos, pathos, logos, and rhetoric, thesis is also a Greek word, originally meaning to place, as in to place a dish on a table. The thesis is your place, your position, among all of the facts and ideas you have encountered in your research. It is the point of departure for everything you will write about in your essay, so it is extremely important to articulate a thesis that both accurately reflects your own perspective and which is arguable with the data available to you. A thesis is usually a relatively simple statement, although it may have more complex arguments nested within it. If I am a candidate for elected office giving a speech, for example, my speech will likely have the very simple thesis, "Vote for me." The whole point of my speech is focused on this thesis, and everything else I say works to support this thesis. It is the body of my speech where I make a number of other more nuanced arguments. Trade deals are ruining our economy, we have to do more to protect the environment, taxes are too high, etc. But all of these sub-arguments work together to support the thesis of the speech as a whole, that you should vote for me. The same principle is at work in advertising and branding. The most successful ad campaigns are the ones with the clearest focus on a particular message. Businesses craft a mission statement that becomes the thesis, the philosophical core of everything else that they do, while advertisements, although they may be very intricately crafted and loaded with subconscious nuances, focus with laser precision on conveying a single message: you want to buy our product. An important step in writing a successful persuasive research paper about a topic, therefore, is identifying a clear point of view that the entire paper will exist to support. You can think of it as your paper's mission statement. By the time someone is done reading this essay, what is the one message that you want your reader to come away with? Write this message in the form of a single sentence, and you have your thesis statement. That said, thesis statements come in many different shapes and flavors. Let's consider some of the different ways we can articulate thesis statements for persuasive research papers about some randomly chosen topics: Napoleon, clouds, and the number 3. Thesis statements can either be informative or argumentative. Some essays simply want to tell you a story, while others are more interested in advancing a particular point of view. We tend to think of a thesis as typically being more agenda-driven, but in fact, every coherent piece of nonfiction writing includes some kind of thesis, even if the thesis is something as basic as Napoleon is a very important historical figure, clouds are fascinating to look at and to study, or the number 3 has a rich history. While none of these thesis statements are particularly earth-shattering, it is easy to imagine how essays starting with these basic messages might go on to convey eye-opening insights about each of these topics. At the same time, however, it is also possible to take an approach to each of these topics that adopts a more controversial or argumentative kind of statement. For example, Napoleon is one of the great villains or great heroes of world history. Developing technology to control cloud formation is crucial to avoiding a future of drought and famine. 3 has a unique status as a charmed number across a wide variety of world religions. Depending on your topic and your personal relationship to your topic, some people may find it easier to write a more information-based essays, while others might find it more natural to take a more controversial or argumentative position. Either approach is perfectly acceptable, but being clear about the nature of your thesis statement will enable you to write a more coherent and persuasive essay. Thesis statements can also be broader or more specific. The other major way of categorizing thesis statements is as broader or more specific. A broader thesis statement looks at a topic from a more overarching perspective, whereas a more specific thesis statement hones in on a specific detail. For example, rather than arguing the broad thesis statement that Napoleon is a very important historical figure, I might focus in on a particular episode in Napoleon's life, such as his defeat in the Battle of Waterloo, and devote my essay to arguing that Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo is an important event in European history. This is still an informative style thesis statement, but now, instead of talking about Napoleon's whole life and its relation to all of history, I am focusing on one part of Napoleon's life and its place in the history of a single continent. Likewise, moving from more general to more specific, the thesis statement, "Clouds are fascinating to look at and to study," might be focused to zero in on a certain kind of cloud. For example, cumulonimbus clouds are fascinating to look at and to study, or a certain aspect of a certain kind of cloud. Cumulonimbus clouds can teach us much about the Earth's atmosphere. Likewise, the number 3 has a rich history might become, the way we write the number 3 is the product of a rich history going back thousands of years. More argumentative thesis statements can also be manipulated to make them more or less specific. Napoleon is one of the great villains or great heroes of world history, can be reconceived to focus on one particularly villainous aspect of Napoleon's career. For example, Napoleon's brutal military tactics qualify him as one of the great villains of European history. Likewise, the argument that developing technology to control cloud formation is crucial to avoiding a future of drought and famine might focus in on the potential of a particular variety of weather control technology. For example, the new technology known as cloud ionization, if adopted on a wide scale, has the potential to eliminate droughts, increase crop yields, and expand access to potable drinking water throughout the world. This last example uses a common thesis writing strategy, which is to articulate a statement that supplements a main point with a series of, typically 3, supporting arguments. This is a useful strategy to experiment with because it helps to create a bridge between your thesis statement and the content of your body paragraphs. Here is another example of how a thesis statement that includes embedded supporting arguments can help to focus the agenda of a persuasive research paper. The broad thesis statement, 3 has a unique status as a charm number across a wide variety of world religions, can become, the number 3 has a unique status as a charmed number in the religious writings of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Specificity, moreover, can always go a step further. The number 3 has a unique status as a charmed number in the religious writings of Christianity. Or, to go more specific, the number 3 has a unique status in the Gospel of Matthew, a central text of Christianity. Or, you could even go more specific, the number 3 plays an important role in Jesus' description of the sign of Jonah, an important passage from the Gospel of Matthew. Once you start getting more and more specific, there is almost no bottom. You can keep digging deeper and deeper into the subatomic structure of your ideas. Usually, the deeper you go, the more interesting discoveries there are to make. This is why more specific thesis statements usually make better essays than less specific thesis statements. The more detailed your analysis becomes, the more likely it is that your observations will be accurate and original. It is also the case that more controversial thesis statements are more likely to make for more engaging essays than more informational thesis statements. But where you decide to fall on this continuum is a personal decision that should stem from your relationship with your topic. You shouldn't try to force an argument that you don't believe in, just for the sake of having an entrenched position to defend. Once you have a thesis statement you believe in, it becomes the guiding principle of the rest of your paper. In fact, once you have your thesis, the structure of the paper basically writes itself, since any reasonable person should be able to look at a thesis sentence and to predict, with more or less accuracy, what the individual paragraphs in the essay will be about, and even how they might be arranged. Once you have your thesis statement, that is, you switch from a strictly creative frame of mind to a more rule-oriented mentality. The rule is that you have to fulfill the project laid out by your thesis statement, and if you listen carefully to your thesis statement, it will tell you exactly what to do with the body of your essay. Here's an example of a broad, informative thesis statement. Napoleon is a very important historical figure. If I make this statement, I have to assume that I have some reasons why I believe this to be the case, or even why someone might. As one of our thesis statements argues, 3 is a magic number, and if I can identify 3 important things that Napoleon did, then I will have the basis for the body of an essay. For example, he spread the upheaval of the French Revolution to the rest of Europe. He established European institutions and laws that are still in effect today. He became a cultural touchstone representing tyranny and romanticism. I may be able to think of more, but focusing on the best 3 will keep an essay like this from becoming too diluted. Here's an example of a broad argumentative thesis statement. 3 has a unique status as a charmed number across a wide variety of world religions. If I follow the cue of my thesis, I'll be obligated to include more than 3 main points, since a wide variety suggests at least 7 or so. In this case, it might be advisable to identify 7 and write the body of your essay as a paragraph about each example. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Tao, Zoroastrianism. Here's an example of a specific informative thesis statement. Cumulonimbus clouds can teach us much about the Earth's atmosphere. Can I identify 3 things that we can learn about the atmosphere from studying cumulonimbus clouds? If so, I have the layout for the body of my essay. There's significance for weather prediction, lightning and electrostatic properties, mysteries of supercell formation. And that could be my paper. Here's an example of a specific argumentative thesis statement. The number 3 plays an important role in Jesus' description of the sign of Jonah, an important passage from the Gospel of Matthew. Because this thesis statement is so specific, it may require a more complicated structure than the 3 main points organization that has been so useful for some of these other thesis statements. If I think through the different parts of the argument I have to make in order to persuade a reader of the validity of my thesis, however, I can chart out how the body of the paper might unfold. I'm going to have to start talking about the 3 days and nights Jonah spent in the belly of the whale. I'm going to have to spend another paragraph or section of my essay talking about the 3 days and nights between Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. I'm going to have to spend a section of my paper talking about the parallels between Jonah and Jesus. And ultimately, I'm going to have to get around to talking about the significance of this passage within the book of Matthew. The value of a well-written thesis lies not only in what it says, but in where it goes. A strong thesis statement not only makes an interesting point, but it sets up the rest of the essay. We will spend more time talking about developing the body of your essay in week 6, but as you play around with the substance and wording of your thesis statement, it's important to keep an eye on the question of what kinds of evidence you will use to support the thesis statement. If you can't come up with any reasons why you believe your thesis statement to be true, it is a sign that you should probably rethink it. Once you have a thesis statement that does seem to open out into a more detailed analysis of your topic, however, you are poised to begin writing with confidence and purpose.